sorry. I'm so sorry. If he has a stab wound to his shoulder, he can sit down.
What do you mean he has a stab wound on his shoulder, ma'am?
Yes, he's bleeding from his shoulder.
A Miami judge has decided to drop some charges against social media influencer Courtney Clenney and her parents. This comes amid the lead up to a long-awaited and still unscheduled trial against the OnlyFans model for the murder of her boyfriend. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. A little bit of background here on 27-year-old Courtney Clenney. This case has been in the media quite a lot, but I'm going to familiarize you with it because we have a big development that has just happened. So we go back to April 2022, and a 911 phone call came in pleading for help at a luxury high-rise in the Edgewater neighborhood of Miami, Florida.
3101. I'm gonna die. I can't feel my arm. 3101. I can't feel my arm.
Ma'am.
So my boyfriend is dying of a stab.
Ma'am, what is the address?
What's that? What's the address?
3131.
3131 Northeast 7th Ave. Please, God, please, come see my boyfriend.
That was Courtney Clenney herself calling in that her boyfriend, 27-year-old Christian Obumseli, had been stabbed. And when first responders arrive, this case takes a wild turn.
Get up! What? Leave! Get up! Get up right now! You get up right now!
Why you have to keep him upright? I just want to keep him
Get up
upright.
right now, mommy,
We're helping
listen,
you.
get up right now.
Baby, wake up, wake up. Shh, wake up.
What's your name, Courtney?
Courtney. Just keep him sitting upright. Leave.
Courtney, listen to me. Get up. Get up, come on. You gotta get the dogs in.
Okay.
Get up.
Just please go. Please
Listen, get him up. Get up right now. You can drop him on the floor. I'll help him out. Get up.
Oh, no.
Get up.
No, I can't.
Get up.
I can't let this, okay?
Hands back.
Wait, it wasn't. I'm so scared. I just need to know that he's okay. Boys, come on. Come here, baby. Daddy's gonna be back soon. Can I just rip? I mean, I will keep my
45-20?
handcuffs on. Can I please rip some? My boyfriend's blood is all over me.
I know, but you can't. Unfortunately, you can't go in there. You can't go in the apartment.
And sadly, Christian later died at the hospital. And Clenney, well, she wasn't arrested until months later, in August of 2022, reportedly out in Hawaii. She was charged with second-degree murder, but has since claimed that the stabbing was in self-defense and that she threw the knife at Christian.
He started doing some shit. He said he wouldn't do it to me again. I said, you know what, we're over. And I walked away and he pinned me to the wall.
He pinned you against the wall.
He pinned me to the wall and then pinned me to the ground. It was choking me. And so I got up and I called my mom and I was talking to her. And then he started charging at me and I just had it in my hand because I was like trying to tell him like don't come
What
here.
do you have in your knife?
Because he was
What do you have in your hand? A knife?
Because I was scared.
I'm asking you, what do you have in your hand?
The knife.
A knife? Okay.
And I called my mom. She was on the phone. She can say like what it was. I was scared and there was just and he started charging me. So I just threw it. Till I was scared of him.
However, the medical examiner who performed the autopsy on Christian has said that his wound would not have been caused by a knife thrown from 10 feet away, as Clenney claims. And an investigation of what is their tumultuous relationship has revealed a slew of incidents leading up to Christian's death, including one just days before when police were called to the condo building after a reported domestic dispute between the couple.
Decide whether or not you're done gaslighting me. Decide whether or not you're done gaslighting me.
I am mad that you told me to come.
Decide right now.
Courtney, that's a fucking threat. I asked you so many times that I don't know, and I apologize. But you hit me.
Shut the fuck up.
I need my phone! Don't touch me!
What is going on? Like, what are you gonna get this mad at me when I'm apologizing to you?
No, Christian.
Like, you're thinking I'm doing it on
Drop your high pitch.
Okay, I'm not doing it on purpose.
You told Sahara, you know damn well the right thing to do is to tell me.
Yes, and I am so sorry.
So shut up and let me life, you dumb.
Now, Clenney is seen on body cam footage telling officers she wants a restraining order against Christian, but she also says that she's not always been the victim. Now, another incident captured on a friend's cell phone from several months before the stabbing shows an altercation between Clenney and Christian while on a trip in Colorado. It's unknown what started the argument, but Clenney accuses her boyfriend of flirting with other girls. Now, this is where the case takes another turn, because Clenney's parents also became implicated in this case. Yes, after 57-year-old Deborah Clenney and her husband, 60-year-old Kim Clenney, allegedly tried to break into Christian's laptop after his death, then texted with Clenney in a group chat about it, including retrieving a passcode to open the device. And by the way, the laptop was not among the personal effects of Christian, which were removed from the apartment after this stabbing. So they had each been charged with one count of unauthorized access of a computer or electronic device, but those charges have now been dropped. Why? Well, CBS News reports that a statement from the Florida State Attorney's Office says Judge Lara Cruz found that there was a conflict of interest involving the family's lawyer, and that information from the texting conversation is covered by attorney-client privilege. And while Clenney was arrested in August of 2022, investigators believe she gave the computer to her parents sometime before she left Florida for Hawaii. Clenney's attorneys are now calling for the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office to recuse itself from the case, saying the communications were obtained illegally. And by the way, Frank Prieto, one of the attorneys representing Courtney Clenney, said that's really disheartening that the state would take these tactics and invade the defense camp, as the judge found. They invaded the attorney-client privilege work product. They read our text, our strategy about this case. They can't and they should not remain on this case. Clenney, who publicly used the name Courtney Taylor in her online presence, including nearly 2 million followers on social media, is being held without bond. She is also set to return to court for a hearing next month, and to be clear, she is still facing that murder charge. The Clenney case is another example of tough subject matter we cover here on Sidebar, and I'm not going to lie to you, it's not easy reporting on these stories, hearing these details, but that is why it's always good to do a checkup on your mental health. It's so important. It shouldn't be ignored. And I want to talk to you about BetterHelp, our great sponsor of this episode of Sidebar. Therapy can be a place to work through the challenges you face in your life, including with respect to all of your relationships. Therapy is super helpful for learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries. It can empower you to be the best version of yourself. And it isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. It's so much more. And here's what's special and unique about BetterHelp. BetterHelp is entirely online. You don't have to run out for appointments. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. And if you visit betterhelp.com/sidebar today, you get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/sidebar. Well, joining me right now is State Attorney from Palm Beach County, Dave Arenberg. Dave, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Great to be back with you, Jesse. You have 2 million followers on social media.
I wish I did. I do not. Don't know why.
You should.
I should. Well, this is maybe after you leave office, you should be my social media manager, although that is not a job that anybody wants. This is weird. This is weird. So what do you make of this? I mean, it seems to me, did the government do something wrong here?
No. I mean, they didn't know that the same lawyer who was representing the defendant was also representing her parents. So this was not something nefarious. They came upon this evidence. They found through messages that there was a laptop. They got the laptop and they filed charges because these folks allegedly had improperly accessed a laptop. And then the judge said, well, no, this is protected by attorney-client privilege, so we're going to suppress the information, and the prosecutors dropped the charges. That's how it's supposed to work. Nothing nefarious here. And so to think that you have to recuse the prosecutor's office entirely from the case, keep dreaming.
Let me give you some statements here to work off of that. So I mentioned what Frank Prieto had to say. Kim Clenney also spoke after this happened, and he called the arrest of him and his wife insanity and said, finally, truth has prevailed. Also, I'd like to say that this has been an ordeal for Deborah and myself for 5 months, especially for the last 2 years, with Courtney being held unjustly for a crime that she did not commit. But it's an ordeal that we would gladly go through again 100 times over if it would provide justice for Courtney. But I think the main thing today it has shown the bias and extreme misconduct of the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office in Courtney's prosecution and the targeting of my wife and I unjustly. Now, the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office released a statement, and by the way, this is all according to NBC News. Judge Lara Cruz found that prosecutors were unaware that attorney Frank Prieto represented Kim and Deborah Clenney, since a retainer agreement hiring him was only produced after their arrest. Additionally, attorney Prieto never publicly indicated that he represented Kim and Deborah Clenney, only their daughter. A reading of the group text by police investigators appeared to indicate the commission of a crime. This information supplied to prosecutors resulted in the criminal charge. Since Judge Cruz's ruling that the information contained in all the text messages were covered by attorney-client privilege, excluding them from use in the criminal case, the charge against each was nol pros. Now, I want to break this down for a second. You don't disagree with the judge's decision here that this was attorney-client privilege?
I'm not sure, because I do think there's attorney-client privilege, but then it could be pierced through the crime-fraud exception.
Explain what that means.
You can't use your attorney to facilitate a crime or to cover up a crime. So were they using the attorney to help get into the computer? That's the argument that the prosecutors were making. And the judge said, no, the conversations on the text messages, the emails, they were pretty innocuous. In fact, although it looks like the victim here, Christian Obumseli, owned the laptop, according to Courtney Clenney, she had access to it, she had rights to it, and that's why this was nothing foul or nefarious going on here. So this just, to me, was just a ruling by the judge, and you see the difference between the prosecution and the defense. The prosecution says, we'll accept it and move on. The defense is saying, you're bad people, you prosecutors, you need to be removed from the case, you're the worst. See, when you're a prosecutor, you have to take that. You can't speak like that about a case or about parties to a case, and it shows you that the other side can say all they want, you just have to be quiet about it and let me do the talking.
Let me give you some statements from the judge. So the judge said that the state was looking at this through prosecutorial blinders that led them to believe the Clenneys and their attorneys were engaged in criminal activity. She said the judge said instead, this is just the normal investigation of a criminal case. The state took it entirely upon themselves to unilaterally conclude the crime-fraud exception applied. So in other words, if I'm understanding this correctly, the judge said, if you believe that, you should have brought it to the court's attention, right? You can't just make that decision. Is that true? Prosecutors can't just unilaterally make a decision, hey, crime fraud exception, these conversations can come in, or we'll arrest people based on these communications?
Correct, but at that point they already had accessed the communications between the parties and their lawyers. See, that's the difference here. Normally, yeah, you go to the court, you say, we'd like to get those privileged communications. We want to pierce that privilege because of the crime fraud exception. But here, they'd already looked at it. You can't undo that, right? You can't unsee it. And so after they saw it, then they said, well, first off, we didn't know that the same lawyer who represented Courtney Clenney also represented her parents. And secondly, even if that's the case, the privilege is pierced because of the crime fraud exception.
Okay, so let's try to understand this a little bit, right? The judge made this decision. I would say, isn't the argument, yeah, but now the prosecution's tainted. They saw those conversations. How can they stay on this criminal case against Courtney Clenney? Isn't they already saw too much? They were exposed too much. Shouldn't you have an outside prosecutor on this now?
But how does that affect the prosecution? They just can't prosecute that charge, right?
Okay.
So it doesn't affect their ability to go after her for second-degree murder, which they will continue to do. As long as they don't use anything in those communications against the defendant, it's fine. This is just the normal prosecution where it's a give and take, and ultimately the judge makes the decision.
I guess the question would be, if you say, and this is very basic, but if you say, hey, prosecutors, we just caught you doing something wrong, and the judge says, yeah, you did something wrong, they shouldn't be the same people to prosecute you on another case. What do you think?
What's the remedy? Is the remedy you throw the prosecutor off the case? No, the court explicitly found that the prosecution did not act with bad ethics. It was not nefarious. It was just a mistake based on not knowing that the same lawyer represented all the parties. So the judge specifically found there was no wrongdoing. Had there been intentional wrongdoing by the prosecution, yes, then you can bounce them off the case. That's the difference.
Okay, now, you're not surprised these charges were dropped because without these communications, there's no case?
Correct, on the charge of the improper accessing of the computer, right. The case against the parents was interesting because it did look like they were trying to help facilitate some sort, at least help their daughter. Reminds me a little bit of the Gabby Petito. What were the parents doing there? You know, that's a case you followed closely. And sometimes if the parents cross that line to try to not just enable their child, but to help them escape responsibility, it could be a crime. In this case, it could have been a crime.
Did you think it was a crime what they did? I mean, was the evidence clear that it was a crime?
I thought so. Look, here's what
and what were they trying to look for?
Well, the prosecution was saying this. You have this laptop that the police didn't discover. It's clearly relevant evidence. It's owned by the victim. And you guys commiserated about how to break into it and then access it, and you never told law enforcement about it.
But if you say they shared it, if Courtney Clenney and Christian Obumseli shared that laptop, different story, right?
That's Courtney Clenney's claim. That's
Right.
well, yeah, it may be owned by him, but we all use it, you know? But if you all use it, then how come you didn't know the password? It sounds like he didn't want you to access it.
What about the fact that it wasn't collected by law enforcement?
Law enforcement are people too. They don't see everything. And maybe, was it hidden by Courtney Clenney? Was that perhaps part of it? Or maybe not. Maybe they just never saw it.
Do you think that recusal of this prosecution office is a possibility? And walk me through the process. How does it work? Who decides whether or not they have to be taken off the case, and what is a timeline that we're looking at?
The judge could decide, or the prosecutor could say, you know what, now we're conflicted, and send it up to the governor to get reassigned to another prosecutor. Won't be me, obviously, because I've been speaking out about this. But that's a possibility, but very unlikely. Very unlikely, because there's no reason why the state attorney's office in Miami-Dade County, which has been working on this case for many months, now has to remove themselves and start anew with some new prosecutor. That's what the defense wants. They know how much this would delay the case, and delays almost always inure to the benefit of the defendant.
Why is that?
Because memories fade, evidence spoils, the heat of passion in the community, let's go get him, sort of cools down. You know, it's much better for the defendant to postpone it as long as he can. And here, I think that's one of their strategies.
Generally speaking, since I actually don't think you and I have talked about this case before. What do you think about it? Do you think it's a strong case against Courtney Clenney for murder?
Oh yeah. I mean, you saw what the medical examiner said, right?
Right.
Courtney Clenney said it was self-defense. I threw the knife 10 feet away. No, looks like you were lying. The medical examiner said that was impossible. Plus, I'm sure that your audience has seen that elevator video, pretty damning, where she doesn't exactly look like a damsel in distress. She looks like the aggressor. And I think that's what's going to really hurt her in the eyes of the juror, that she's going to claim self-defense, which means she's almost certainly going to have to testify. And not only will they see videos of her being the aggressor and reportedly previously stabbed him on a different occasion, and that's all going to come in if that's true. Right? And that's going to use against her. Plus, I got to level with you, Jesse. When you're an OnlyFans model, you know, obviously you wouldn't know anything about that, but if you're an OnlyFans model, it doesn't have a lot of jury appeal. The jury is not going to like her. They're going to see her with 2 million followers as an influencer, an OnlyFans model who claims to be a victim when you see video that shows otherwise.
But generally speaking, you say that she would have to take the stand in her own defense, which I agree with you. I mean, a lot of the times we cover self-defense cases, I know it's, you know, you always say it's always a danger for a defendant to take the stand. I think it's always, self-defense cases, it's almost necessary for them to explain why they use lethal force. Having said that, because of all that prior videos, those prior incidents, I think that could be a way where she might say, I think there's too much of a risk. How do I explain? I mean, just put all the blame on Christian, or they say, listen, we might have had fights in the past. Doesn't mean I murdered him. Doesn't mean I stabbed him to death.
But some of that evidence against her could come in even if she doesn't testify.
That's what I'm saying is, like, if she testifies, like, if she takes a stand, she knows she's going to be asked about that.
Oh, yeah.
Her explanations could be very problematic. I mean, again, she could try to say she was always the victim in all this, or, look, you know, we got into a really bad fight. I said things I didn't mean, but doesn't mean I stabbed him to death on purpose, right?
I just don't think she has a lot of jury appeal. I think that it's going to be troublesome for her to take the stand, but she has to, because under the law, to establish self-defense, you've got to show that you were in reasonable fear of your life. Who better to say that than the person herself? She's going to explain why she felt threatened. She may even use a battered spouse syndrome, even though they were not married. She may say he abused me over time and drag his name through the mud. After all, there are only 2 people who know for sure, and one of them is dead.
By the way, so this doesn't come into evidence at all. There's nothing about this that will make its way into her criminal trial. The jury, unless they read about it, which they shouldn't, well, how do they know? We don't know they're jury members yet, but the jury will not be exposed to anything we talked about this, the laptop or anything.
No. When you pick a jury, the jury can have knowledge about a case. They can even have biases. They just have to say they can put them all aside and follow the evidence in the law. But it's unlikely that they'll know about the computer stuff. I don't even know what was on the computer. I don't think anyone does.
By the way, just in general, in Florida, is this a big case? A lot of people talking about it? Is it going to be hard to find a jury?
No. I've had some high-profile cases. We've always been able to find a jury because you don't need jurors who are a blank slate, just jurors who are going to be objective, follow the evidence and the law.
We've had a lot of high-profile defendants relatively recently in all different kinds of cases, and there have been juries who have been seated in there, so I'm sure we'll be able to get one here. But we'll see which way this case goes. Big development here. Dave Arenberg, Good seeing you, my friend.
Great to be here, Jesse.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.